Hey, this is Mrs. Smekens, and we have focused heavily on this idea of summarizing what authors say. We can do it in a retell. That's where we paraphrase a chunk exactly like an author said it, just putting it in our own words. We've also looked at literature. When we read a story, we can summarize its highlights using somebody wanted but so then. And we can also tell you the main idea of a story using the same frame, just saying a few less details. In the last couple lessons, we've switched gears. We're still working on summarizing and figuring out what authors have said, but we've been doing it with nonfiction, which we're realizing is much harder. There's just no real roadmap. Like narrative text has roadmap. Nonfiction doesn't. So we've been working on this idea of you got to read the text and you've got to be able to group information. Once you can put details in groups, those groups help you identify the important facets of the text. And it's those important facets that become the highlights and what you will write about when you write a summary. Okay. So we've been working on summary writing with nonfiction. Now we're going to move to the grand poopah, you guys. The last step here is to figure out the summary of the summary. To be able to take a big, long nonfiction text and be able to whittle it down to a single sentence. Remember that test question? What is this text? What is this passage? What is this mostly about? It's one sentence. Which sentence best describes the main idea of this passage? It's one sentence. Main idea is always one sentence. Okay, now, main idea with nonfiction is it has two parts to it, okay? And most kids are really good with the first part. And that is identifying what the subject matter or the topic is that is discussed in the text. It's about vulgar language. What's this mostly about? Netflix. What's this mostly about? Online posts. Okay, yes. That's only part of it, though. Being able to name the topic is the first step, but it's the easy step. And it's not a sentence. Vulgar language is not a sentence. Online posts, not a sentence. Netflix binge, not a sentence. You have to be able to add the second part. And that's what we've got to work on. If you're really going to give me the main idea, one sentence, of all of what the author said, whittled down to a single sentence in nonfiction, then that single sentence needs a subject and a predicate. And you've got the subject by naming the topic, vulgar language or binge watching. But what about it? This idea that the passage is on a subject, yeah, but it only really dives into a facet or two, a specific angle. So it's not what is it about, it's what about the topic is this about? We've got to narrow it down more. Okay, so how do you do that? Okay, well, it's different. The approach, the process is different than what we did for fiction. Remember, when we were trying to figure out what the main idea of a story was, we just took the summary and made it a single sentence, somebody wanted but so then. Okay, that's not how I would suggest doing it for nonfiction. If you'll remember the last lesson, we came up with groupings of information, and then we came up with kind of a summary, right? Couple sentences to summarize it. Okay, well, if I still have that up here, I'm telling you right now, what we would not do is probably summarize the summary. I don't think that's the most efficient way to do nonfiction. I don't think that it's always the most accurate. I think you can do this more accurately and more efficiently by taking what you've always heard main idea is and actually testing it out. Okay, what have we always said? Teachers have always said main idea is what it's mostly about. Okay, let's zoom in on the word mostly. Mostly means quantity. Most of the details are about this. Not this topic, more than this topic, the facet. What about this topic? The secret to main idea in informational text is mostly. It's quantity. What you want to do is read a passage and start looking for repeated details. It mentioned this, and it mentioned it again, and it mentioned it again, and it mentioned it again. It's all on vulgar language, or it's all on Netflix, or it's all on online posting. But as it starts to mention details, when it starts to repeat them, now it might not use the exact same word over and over, because that would not be good word choice and thus not great writing. But it repeats the detail in the form of a synonym. It says it again in another word, in another way, in a phrase. But if a main idea is what it's mostly about, then you got to figure out what are the details that are taking up the bulk of the space in the passage. They're being repeated. They're said over and over. So let's play off of quantity, you guys. It's repeated details, not exact same words, synonyms. Let me show you how this would look, okay? And you can attack it different ways. This is where annotation can be huge. Annotation, remember, is when you write on the text, inside the margins in the text, okay? So we've been doing note-taking where we've been lifting details outside of the original text, lifting them out to see groupings. Okay, when it's time for main idea, I think it's actually easier to look inside the text and work with only that text. And I want you to think about it as like putting on X-ray vision glasses or something. And some people will circle and underline or box repeated details. Some people will use different color highlighters, different color pens, or digital highlighters, the green, the pink, the yellow. Okay. So remember this passage. I think this was your independent reading after the last lesson. Okay, so if we looked at this and we read it, what I'm reading for from beginning to end is any detail that is mentioned over and over, a word or a phrase or a synonym for a word or a phrase mentioned over and over. Now, I can guarantee you there's going to be more than one repeated set of details. And I'm looking for any details that get repeated over and over, and in particular are mentioned in the beginning, mentioned throughout the middle, and mentioned again at the end, because that is mostly about. If it's mostly about it, it's not just in one spot, it's throughout the whole text or a lot of the text. Okay, I'm not going to read this to you. Okay, but what I am going to do is tell you that after having read it, I started to notice certain details being repeated. Okay, I'll just start the beginning and then I'm going to go to the next slide. I hear it when walking to class. It's all throughout media, television, social media. Okay, right away my thinking voice says, whoa, those are synonyms for media. So I would mark media, television, social media, music, and whether I'm using yellow highlighter because those are all the same things, or I'm underlining because they all go together. Now I want to keep going, and I only X-ray vision. I want to look for anything that has to do with media, social media, or where we might hear vulgar language. And I'm going to mark all of those in yellow or in pink or in underlines. Okay. But then as I'm reading, when I start to see other repetitious words, details like profanity, and then the idea of vulgar language, and then cussing, and then foul language, and I want to mark all of those in a different color. Maybe use pink. Don't underline, box them. I am looking to identify what are the details, and there will be more than one, that are being repeated with synonyms, but being repeated throughout the passage. I've got to first figure out what are the repeated details? Because that is going to help me generate the main idea sentence. I already did it. I read through this passage, which I know you're probably familiar with, and I just went ahead and I started to mark. In blue, I put all the places where you might hear vulgar language. Okay, culture, society, professional setting, holiday dinner. Okay, I marked all the places this author mentioned it. Okay, and I just chose to put those in blue. I didn't know ahead of time I was looking for that. I just started reading, and once I started to see repetition in a detail through synonym, I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Go back and mark those, Mrs. Smekens, because those are some repeats." Because if main idea is repeated details told in a sentence, in terms of a main idea sentence, then I got to first collect what are the repeated details. But it's not just one set, and that's why I use different colors. I also noted synonyms, repetitious words for vulgar language, bad words, profanity, swear, maximum vulgarity, curse, profanity, swear words, curse words, foul language, a slip up, anything that was in that realm. Okay, now let's just stop. Look at the blue. Where we hear vulgar language, right? That was repeated. I already showed you that. But look at where the blue is. There's blue in the beginning. There's blue in the middle. There's blue at the end. Yeah, that's a sign that the text is mostly about. You better include that in your one sentence summary, in your main idea. Yeah, same with the pink. I got it in the beginning. I got it in the middle. I got it at the end. Okay, so now what's the green? Well, again, I didn't go after green. I didn't go after a third thing. It's just while reading, my thinking voice was saying, whoa, here's another category of repeated details / synonyms. And it was all of the reasons that we would, or the intent behind why we would drop a swear word, blow off steam. We're just joking. We're trying to insult someone, derogatory, whatever. We're throwing those around. And again, there's not nearly as much green, and it's not in the beginning and in the end. It's definitely in the middle. I may not use this category of the intent in my main idea sentence, but I don't know that yet. So my first goal is just collect repetitious details and somehow group them by color. These all go together. By underlines versus circles versus boxes. Something you need to or a list, just write them down. Okay, I got these, just do 2 or 3 different lists. Okay, I do have some other colors here. I have kind of this orangish red, and it really only appears in the 3rd column, but it's kind of like the impact, the effects. Okay, violence, out of control, hostile environment, bad impression. These are all kind of the effects, cause effect of vulgar language. Okay, so now what I would do first when I'm trying to figure out main idea of nonfiction is not summarize the summary. I wouldn't go after it that way. I think that's more of a waste of time. To summarize, I would do what we learned in the previous lesson, yes. But for main idea, I would just start reading it and I would start listening to my thinking voice for repetitious synonyms. And I would start to make a list or color code or categorize. Okay, now, once I do that, now some people can just generate a main idea after looking at it like this. But I think for some of us, this is like, okay, a kaleidoscope of color. Now what do? I would put all the blue together, all the green together, all the pink together. I would take it all out and I would just start to look at it together. So here are the same words that I have color coded here. Okay, I just pulled out the black. Now watch. Then I group it. So as I group it, I realize that this is what it's mostly about. The passage, the main idea, what it's mostly about is something to do with the places. These are all places. And vulgar language. These are all synonyms for swearing. The intent, the reason you might throw out a swear word. And then the effect. Do you see what I just did? I just put a label to each of those lists of synonyms. I put a label. So I have the blue represents the where, the places that I might hear swear words, okay? And then, of course, just swear words, cuss words, vulgar profanity, use one of those words because that's the topic. This is the topic, okay? This is a facet of the topic. And then the reason behind, the reason or intent, there are several details about the reason or intent, somewhat that they were repeated. How do I know they're repeated? Because there's a whole lot of green words there. Okay. And then the effects, if those were the causes, the effects, the impacts. Okay. Once you have a category for your different groupings, there it is. There's your pre-write. I need to now turn this into a sentence. I need one sentence that basically uses all of that information and maybe even some of those actual words. Once you collect the details and group them and you say, all right, I need a facet. Remember, it's not just the topic. The topic is vulgar language or swear words or profanity or whatever, but it's what about it? Well, this article is about the swear words and where you hear them and why, the reasons behind them and the effects of them. And it's all pretty negative, right? The reasons are all negative, blow off steam, an insult, derogatory, right? Violence is negative, hostile, bad impression. It's all negative. And so I'm going to actually write that here, negative intent, reasons, negative impacts or effects. Okay. So now watch and just listen to Mrs. Smekens and see how she does this. Okay, so it's in a lot of places, lots of different places, very widely heard. And we're talking about vulgar language. And so I'm probably going to start with that piece. Okay, partially because the text started that way. If we're going to do the main idea, kind of like the summary, it needs to go in order. It makes sense to kind of start with the first category or facet you picked up on. So the first category of all the blue was where, so lots of different places. So although vulgar language is heard, lots of places, is maybe not heard, is common, is commonplace, common to hear. Although vulgar language is commonplace. Okay, check. I did that. I already mentioned vulgar language. Now I got to just mention this to finish this sentence. Although vulgar language is commonplace, its intent, reasons, and impacts. I think that just sounds better. And impacts are negative. I just did it. I mentioned this. Look at what we did. If I go all the way back to the original article, all I did was I was reading, and when words, sentiments, details started to be repeated with synonyms, I just started to mark them. And every time I saw a different category of repetitious details, I gave it a different color. Then I struggle to see it with all of this. So then I pull out those words, okay, and then I color coordinate or categorize them. And then I'm like, okay, this is about, I need a label. And then those labels, poof, turn into the meat of the one sentence. Try it with me. Let's do it with online posts. Remember this one? Let's grab. Okay, so this was the one we did a couple lessons ago where we read about colleges and employers and how they look at what you post online, and it's never ever really gone. And okay, so I just started to read. And while I was reading, I started to notice the word college admissions, college admissions officers. It just kept university, it kept coming up. So I made it blue. Okay. And then anything about employers, companies, hiring, those kinds of things. I said future employer, boss. I made all those green. Okay. And then there was a lot about the you that's being put out there online, the brand, how you appear in the world, your online presence, your life, your opinions, what you say that might be damaging, embarrassing, complaining, mean, or positive, your interests, your community, your experiences, your education, right? All of that was the same kind of category. So let me go to the next slide and say, all right, so now I lifted out all of those repetitious details. This is what readers do. You cannot tell me what it's mostly about until you read it and figure out the categories. It's mostly quantity, mentioning over and over, beginning, middle, and end. That's how you're going to get there. All right, then this is somewhat helpful. I like to then put it into grouping one more time, all by color. So I'm seeing 3 groupings here, you guys. Are you? 3 colors. So we've got to have, let's come up with our kind of like we did here, okay? Let's come up with our 3 categories because we have 3 colors. Let's come up with 3 categories, okay? And I'm just seeing the word college a lot in that first one, so that's kind of a no-duh, right? Okay, so we've got something about college. Okay, now look at the green. Companies, employees, employers, screen people, hire people, or people, future employer, future boss, company. Give me a label. Don't make this hard. Give me a label. The green is mostly about companies, bosses, employers. Okay, you could say any of those. Employers, companies, bosses. Got it. So this has to be in our main idea sentence. One of those words. This has to be in our main idea sentence because there's a lot of those colored details, beginning, middle, and end. So we need to mention them in our single main idea sentence. All right, I need a category for the pink. How you appear to the world, online presence, your life, your opinions, your education, your experience, your embarrassing things, your comments. Okay, what you say online, that's a category. Okay, can we say it with a little more sophistication? What you put out there, your online messaging, okay, online presence. You could actually use that phrasing if you're like, yeah, all of this is about you and what you project. Ooh, how you project yourself. Okay, so you could do that. You could say something about online presence or how you project yourself. Okay. Okay, so we need a sentence that has these 3 elements in it. So and you don't start with, this article is about, no. I didn't do that. You just start. What's this about? Well, here's what, although vulgar language is commonplace, its intent and impacts are negative. That's what the author's main idea was. Okay, so we don't start with the main idea is. No. You start with the subject matter, okay? And so let's just start with college or colleges and who else do we hear from? Employers, colleges and employers. Something about the pink, your online presence. Colleges and employers. Online presence. Okay, we don't have verb, people. We don't have a verb. We need a verb. Sentences have verbs. Okay, so look. It's probably not going to be the pink. Let's go back to the green. What did we find out that companies are doing with the information they're finding? Screening, hiring. Okay, we don't want to get too specific. We need a category. What's a category? They're using that information. Colleges and employers. They're checking you out. They're evaluating you. They're assessing you. Colleges and employers assess assess, now let's not say you because it's not you, potential employees, yes, or potential college students, those who are applying, what can we call applicants? Good. Assess applicants, possessives, online presence. Colleges and employers, assess applicants' online presence. College, employers, online presence, how we're projecting ourselves. This, you just did it. This is the main idea of that passage. It's the one sentence summary. What we're learning to do in this lesson is to read a text and figure out what it's mostly about in nonfiction. And the easiest way to do that is to just look for repeated details. Whatever is being repeated, it has quantity, right? It's mostly about it because it keeps coming up over and over. So you don't want to just say, it's about colleges. Oh, come on, that's not a sentence. It has to be a sentence. Okay, it's about swearing. Oh, what about swearing was the message in this article? So we got to make sure we have a predicate, subject and predicate. What is it about and what about that topic specifically did we learn? All right, if you were in Mrs. Smekens' class, I'm going to ask you to do this, and I'm going to ask you to do it with binge watching. You've read this text, but you haven't read it with this lens. I'm not looking for you to go back to your web and all your bubbles and summarize the. No. I want you to decide, are you going to draw lines, boxes, circles to represent different repeating detail categories? Are you going to use different color highlighters? But I just want you to read, and I want you to read. And every time you kind of see a repeated detail, synonym, saying the same thing, just a slightly different way, mark it. Because though that's telling you, yes, it is mostly about this, I better have this category represented in my sentence. And you might have 2, you might have 3, you might have 4 categories that you have to figure out how to incorporate into your main idea sentence. By the end, all I want is a single sentence. I want you to give me the main idea of this passage. If you were in Mrs. Smekens' class, that's what we'd be doing, but your teacher might have a better idea.